Welcome to episode 186 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Section 31, how it's changed all over all the iterations from each show. So I'm really excited to talk about that. Before we get into that, how you doing this morning, Bill?
Doing well. Looking forward to talking about this. I think it's one of our like broader kinds of topics. It's not like super specific this season, this episode, this character.
Yeah.
We could talk about a few different shows and maybe even a movie here.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about some Trek, I guess. So
Yeah.
we should dive right into it.
Well, before we do,
Yeah, how's your rewatch going?
my rewatch is going okay. I watched since the last time we did this. I have watched. Where did I leave off? Yesterday, I watched from Deep Space Nine, The Reckoning, and Valiant. I think The Reckoning's pretty good. I think it's an episode that puts Sisko in a pretty tight bind and having to kind of test his fate and his commitment to his role as emissary and having to balance that with, being a captain in Starfleet, and that's really well-mined territory for Sisko's character at this point in the show, and is kind of an ongoing storyline. I think they do some neat things with putting Jake in harm's way and putting Sisko in a position to have to make tough choices. Kai Wynn gets some cool things to do in this one, so I think it's a pretty good episode. I don't love it, but I think it's solid. I don't like Valiant. We've talked about it before. I think it's one of the few episodes of Star Trek that I think I can kind of squarely point to the guest cast and kind of maybe put a lot of the shortcomings of the episode on their shoulders. Some of the writing's pretty clunky too, but I think the young guest cast is a little Beverly Hills 90210 for me. Little angsty, little whiny. I've never been a fan of that episode. It's kind of like nails on a chalkboard to me. Voyager. Oh, good. No, what do you think?
I just can't get behind them during wartime sending I forget the class that the Defiant is, but another Defiant just out to just train. I feel like that would be on the forefront. I know it's technically a prototype or whatever, but I feel like those would be on the forefront like the Defiant is. So
right.
Why would you send the Valiant with a bunch of kids?
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's a tough premise to sell, and they have a tough hill to climb. But I think with better performances and more dynamic characters at the heart of it, maybe it
holds
works
up
a little bit better than it does. Yeah. But because that stuff falls flat, it really, I think, makes it a tough climb for that story, that episode. Voyager, I watched Living Witness, which is one of my favorites.
Oh, so good.
I love that episode.
So good.
So unique, so different. Ambitious concept, and a really fun way to scratch some of those mirror universe itches, letting the actors do some of those things without actually doing the mirror universe, which is really cool. Kind of get a flavor of what that would look like, but not kind of preferably for me, not necessarily further exploring that world, kind of leaving that alone, but still giving those actors a chance to do that kind of stuff. I like that episode a lot. And then Demon is the last one I watched. And I'm okay on that. I'm not a huge fan of that either. It gets a little silly, and the running out of gas to the point of near disaster, and it feels really arbitrary and sudden. That's one of the things. I'm a big advocate for Voyager, a little more serialized than people give it credit for. But episodes like Demon make it hard to defend some things. It seems like that situation would not sneak up on them and would be a major emphasis if it's going to get that bad, that quickly and cause that big of an issue, that it would not feel so suddenly dropped on the crew and the audience. So it gets a little silly too with some of the stuff on the planet, and I don't know that the production stuff holds up as well as some other Voyager stuff. So it's not a huge favorite, but I'm couple good ones. Living Witness for sure, and The Reckoning I really enjoyed.
Nice. For me, I think I only watched 3 episodes this week. So I think the last one I mentioned was Field of Fire, I think, Bill. So the next one that I watch is Chimera. After that, Bada Bing, Bada Bang. And then the next episode, which I'm guessing we're going to be talking about today, Inter Arma, Section 31, the last Section 31 of Deep Space Nine. But yeah, I think a decent run. I think Chimera is kind of brings up an interesting topic about that they haven't really touched on, I think, till this point. It's always been known that the Dominion sent out all these, like, I don't know, seeds or whatever, and for them to eventually come back to the Dominion, and one of those shows up on the station, and some stuff ensues. But I think my favorite out of the bunch is probably Bada Bing, Bada Bang. I think it's just kind of a fun, kind of cheesy, corny type of, I don't know, casino, I don't know, holodeck type of episode. I think it's really fun. So yeah, that's my rewatch recap for this week.
It's a good run. I like all 3 of those episodes. I think they're all very different from each other. Chimera is a good character study for Odo. Good point, like a good opportunity to kind of pause and look at where his mentality is at this point, and how committed he is to, the Alpha Quadrant and living with solids, and give him a chance to advocate for his friends and that way of life. And Bada Bing, Bada Bang is sort of Deep Space Nine's last foray into having a good time. It's sort of at the end of the opportunity for standalone stories, and there's opportunities for comedy and fun there. And Inter Arma, obviously, there's a little bit more Section 31 stuff to come this season at the very end in this big arc that you have coming up. But it's sort of the last, like, really meaty, real exploration of what Section 31 is out there doing. There's a little more to come, like I said, but it's a real juicy Section 31 story with some really good Bashir stuff. So we have a few people in the chat: Jimmy77, Ozzy Trekkie, Cyber Honey. Jimmy77 saying my camera's pausing, like it's a little choppy maybe. One thing I could do if it continues, and it looks like it is continuing, I could turn my camera off if that's less distracting and just talk.
Yeah, because the audio has been fine so far, but yeah, the video has been pausing a little bit.
I'll turn it off, and then maybe, I don't know if that'll help. We'll see. Well, we'll monitor it, and if it gets bad, we'll go to an audio version of me only, because that can be distracting. I respect that. Yeah. Cyber Honey's asking us for our favorite Section 31 episode. We will do that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and probably we will answer.
We will answer that. So as we get into this sort of topic of the week, we didn't really plan like a specific chart. We haven't charted a specific course for exactly how we're going to tackle this. It's kind of just whatever we kind of have in mind, wherever the conversation naturally goes. We have all different kinds of iterations of this over the course of, would be 3 shows now, and 4 including the Kelvin timeline, if you want to count that.
Yeah. So
Section 31's been tackled by a number of different shows and casts and writers, and they all have a little bit of a different flavor, and I'm interested to kind of explore that and see how we feel about it in general as a whole, and maybe talk about which show maybe used it best, which show we maybe wish used it differently. Yeah. And go from there.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Do it. I think I am going to pause I think I'm going to go to audio only, because it looks like it's pretty choppy on my video.
Okay.
I'm kind of keeping an eye on it on
cool.
My
I just have to look at my ugly mug this morning.
Yeah. Not so ugly, but the hazards of live streaming and technology, and not sure what the issue is, but we'll get it sorted, and hopefully be back to full strength next week on that front. So I guess now that you're deep into Deep Space Nine and you're into the meat of their treatment of uh, the Section 31 story, how do you feel about it so far from Deep Space Nine's perspective? As the show that kind of introduced it, it's kind of the last thing you're experiencing on
Yeah.
this rewatch, at least with Discovery kind of being the first time around, obviously with season 2.
Mm-hmm.
But having seen Enterprise's treatment of it, Discovery's treatment of it, now you're doing the Deep Space Nine thing and seeing the beginnings of it again. How are you feeling about the way Section 31 is kind of used in Deep Space Nine?
I feel good. I think it's it feels right at home in Deep Space Nine. I think Deep Space Nine from the very beginning has always been exploring the darker side of the Federation and some tough topics. So it feels right at home in Deep Space Nine. And I think because other species in the show have their version of Section 31. They feel a little bit more well known, I think, at this point. I think they do in Deep Space Nine. Section 31 feels more mysterious, and I think it feels less so in maybe the later shows. And I don't know if that's because of the episodes or the writing or anything, or just because we've only got a couple episodes to this point, it being mentioned. So, but no, I think it's a good, very good use in Deep Space Nine. I don't know, we could go pretty much any direction, but for me, my overall thoughts on Section 31, I really enjoy Section 31. I think it feels right that the Federation has something like this, as idealistic as people want to think the Federation can be and is. I think there is always something for this. I think the issue that I have maybe later on, it gets a little one-dimensional and it gets a little kind of feels the same. So I'm just curious to see how this new show, which feels a little bit a ways off, but how this new show is going to tackle that. Because I think similar to the Borg kind of gets declawed with the more we get to see them. They don't feel as dangerous until maybe Picard. I think when we come back to Picard, they do feel dangerous and scary. But that's a lot of thoughts. Bill, do you have any?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think Deep Space Nine, especially, is sort of the most fertile ground to introduce and explore the Section 31 thing, because Deep Space Nine spends so much time in the shadows with, like you mentioned, with other species kind of versions of this. The Tal Shiar gets some play in TNG, and then in Deep Space Nine with the episode you just watched, Inter Arma, and the Obsidian Order on Cardassia certainly gets a lot of discussion with Garak's character. And I think it's interesting to think about Section 31 as sort of Starfleet's version of that. Sort of hybrid special ops, secret police, dark shadow work. And I think it does make sense. And the way Deep Space Nine is so interested in exploring, Starfleet and the Federation and this 24th century life that humanity is living, has this sheen of utopia, and there are many great qualities to what they're doing and how they're living, but there is an underbelly to it, and that it's more complex and it's three-dimensional, and there's a dark side to everything, and there's struggles, and there's things to tackle to keep that alive, and it's a struggle, and it's not something that's just naturally we have arrived and easy. Deep Space Nine plays with that a lot over the course of that show, and Section 31 feels like a natural extension of that idea. So it's only fitting that that's where it would be introduced. It would feel, I think, more shoehorned, more forced in a show like The Next Generation. I don't think The Next Generation's mentality was aligned to introducing at least something like this. But Deep Space Nine certainly is. And I think you're also right that the way that it's treated in Deep Space Nine as a real surprise that they exist, that somebody like Cisco, who's a captain, who has a pretty critical role to play
Yeah.
in Starfleet's mission and what's going on in the day, does not know that they exist, and is surprised by them. Is a little different than what we see in some of the later iterations. Discovery, especially, I think in that show, it's treated as less of a mystery and a little bit more out in the open, which is an interesting thing to think about, like how that works. I think Enterprise, it's still a little bit of a surprise. Archer doesn't quite understand that that's there either. I don't think he's as aware as, say, Pike is, that it's out there and doing its thing. So there's something to look at with maybe in the 23rd century. It gets a little bit more mainstream and has a little bit more influence, and then recedes back into the shadows maybe after what we see in season 2, in the way that Section 31 kind of gets knocked on its butt a little bit. Maybe it.
You think? I don't know if I've seen this before, but Assignment Earth. Do you think that's?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, things like that. That there are stories where we see kind of mysterious characters hopping through time, hopping from place to place, and kind of doing some shady business. And you can certainly watch Star Trek now, I think, with an eye on doing some headcanon retcon work on could that be some association with could he be some Section 31 agent or involved with them somehow, or is it a like the other one with Section 31 with those kinds of things is like the temporal Cold War stuff,
that's
like
true,
time hopping, coming and going,
that's true,
across time. There are these opportunities with kind of playing backseat continuity
to link those somehow.
And I think both of those things lend themselves to that. Section 31 certainly certainly does. But I also think Bashir, I think they do a good job of using Bashir with Section 31 too. I think he's a natural character to be our link into learning about it and getting sucked into it. His personality profile of being interested in James Bond like spy stuff, like that's an interest of his. That's kind of his mentality. He kind of fancies himself.
He's I don't know. I think it works great as well. But I agree with you, Bill. But I think it works well because he's lied his whole life.
Yes, exactly.
So
I agree.
I think he fits the bill perfectly. I don't.
Yes.
I can't really see any other character kind of falling into that Section 31 stuff. So
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right. It's the spy stuff, but even more so, it definitely is. This is a guy who's kept his identity under wraps for forever, and has operated and gotten his way to this point in his career while keeping this huge part of his past private, and it hasn't impacted his ability to do his job. And I think that makes him an attractive candidate for Section 31. It makes a lot of sense logically for him to be approached, and his interest in, I think that definitely is the building block towards Section 31 being interested in him, and their hope for his interest in joining and being a part of it comes from he likes the spy life. Like there's an interest there.
Yeah, perfect combination.
I think the building blocks in his character foundation being built over those 6 seasons leading up to Inquisition, when we learn all this stuff about Section 31, is really well situated to put him in this position and make it a credible, dramatic point.
What's
he want to do? Is he going to do it? Is he interested? Is he not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the type of characters and people that they recruit. So
yeah, absolutely.
In Enterprise, I'm not sure if Reed really fits that bill, but like when I think of like the newer stuff, like I don't know, I just feel like those characters, I don't know, maybe fit the bill a little bit better. I mean, Tyler and Georgiou. Yeah, I just think that they fit the bill a little bit better.
Reed,
than
I think
maybe Reed.
Reed makes some sense to me. I guess like he's a guy who
to me he's a patriot, maybe, and maybe that's kind of their angle, is being a patriot and more. I don't know.
It's some of that. I think his I think one of the things that they kind of build with him is he doesn't make friends easily. He's very private. He's kind of cut off ties with his family. His parents don't know much about him anymore. He doesn't go home often. It feels like he's a guy who is kind of an anomaly. You think of early on in Silent Enemy when it's his birthday and Hoshi's trying to call people that he knows about what's his favorite food.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
People he was roommates with, people he dated, his parents. Nobody has a clue. So I think the building block there is that he's this sort of mystery man that comes and goes through these assignments and these points in his life, and people somehow manage to not really know him. And that makes some sense to me, that he would have some ties to that. And maybe retroactively, because he had, if correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while since it's been a few years now since I watched Enterprise in full. But my memory says that he had ties to Section 31 prior to Enterprise. Like, this isn't a new recruitment. They're kind of like pulling him back to it.
Yeah.
And when that
he thought he was
storyline
done.
popped up,
Like, he thought he was
he
done.
thought he was done.
Yeah.
Right. So is that part of why he's so private? Like, as a young person, as a young officer, he's doing all this Starfleet intelligence. Like, is that why he's so private? Yeah. Because he's got this stuff ingrained in his head. They've kind of conditioned him to be a big, nebulous, anomalous person who is a mystery to people. To maintain that sheen of kind of ambiguity. Mm-hmm. So that works pretty well for me too. And Enterprise, I feel like, gets away with a lot of things because it's so far back in time from Deep Space Nine, and
could do pretty much anything.
I think they could get away with a lot, and I think in Deep Space Nine they make mention of that Section 31 in the charter. And has been there all along. Like, it's always been there. It's an early entry into the sort of Starfleet, charter. And so, like, the idea was that it's kind of always been there. So I think seeing that,
it's interesting because it feels like there's Section 31 has always been there, but the involvement level has been like up and down. I feel like
absolutely.
In the Deep Space Nine, it's a little bit more subdued. They don't have any ships, which I really like.
Yes.
I appreciate. They just appear, and
more mysterious.
But before that, in Discovery, they've got ships and things, and that's interesting too. And I think, I don't know, it's a tough balance because I think too much of it might be take away from the overall mysterious, and that's why I've always been, because I feel like a Section 31 show has always been on the table. I just think that I don't know, and it's tough too because which they're kind of talking about in chat, there's a lot of exploration in the novel and the literary universe, so that's another kind of side of Section 31. But to get back to my original point, that's my issue with a Section 31 show, and I feel like that's always been, I've always seen that cited as like that would be cool to see. But I think one of the positives is the unknown about Section 31, and I hope that they kind of I don't know, keep that in the show. I'd like to see, like, if they're on a mission, that's kind of their group. Like, I don't want to see, I don't want to peek behind the whole curtain, but maybe just a little bit here and there, instead of just really shining a light on something that I think the positive is the darkness of it and the unknown.
I would agree, and what I'm about to go into is going to sound, if you don't know me, and that's the first time you've heard me talk, I'm going to sound like I'm maybe knocking on Discovery a little bit, which anybody who knows me, especially you, knows that
complete opposite.
I'm not one. Yeah, exactly. But the way Section 31 is portrayed in Enterprise and Discovery and Deep Space Nine for me is much preferable to the kinds of things they did in the second season of Discovery, because I think you're right. I think Section 31 works best in the shadows as a mystery. The more unknown and the more scary and the more in the shadows they are, the more interesting they are. And giving them ships and a small fleet and headquarters that is known.
Feels like they might.
Yeah, I get the ebbs and flows of history being explored, and I get like this is over the course of from Enterprise to Deep Space Nine. We're talking 200 years of time being, between those two extremes. So Discovery's exploration of Section 31 is very far away from both what we see in Enterprise and what we see in Deep Space Nine. So I grant them that there can be ebbs and flows, and that Section 31 could have, from Enterprise to TOS and Discovery, built influence and become more of a factor in Starfleet's presence and less of an unknown thing. And then especially with the way that storyline plays out, where they're kind of broken down into their most essential elements at the end of season 2, and they're kind of beaten and defeated and having to reevaluate their whole thing, that they could, kind of recede back into the shadows and maybe stay there after the disaster that was season 2. But the concern I would have about a show surrounding Section 31 is what we saw in Discovery is, for my money, the more you put them on screen, the more mainstream you make them, the more we learn about them, one-dimensional they kind of become.
Yeah.
So the challenge of that show would be to find a way to, while living in that space and exploring that concept and filling us with Section 31 stuff, making sure that it doesn't lose that. If you're going to sacrifice mysterious, unknown, mystery elements, you have to replace that with three-dimensionality, complexity, and not allow it to get too one note. And I think where season 2 of Discovery starts to taper a little bit and starts to struggle a little bit in the back half with some of, I prefer the first half of season 2 to the second half of season 2, because I think the more we get of the Section 31 stuff, the less interesting that is, and the more one-dimensional villain we're kind of dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has been a pretty common takeaway from folks reevaluating season 2 and looking at Discovery as a whole, that may have been a misstep. And I can't argue too aggressively with that.
Yeah.
So, I certainly prefer the way Deep Space Nine and Enterprise handled it in smaller doses, kept them in the shadows, kept them mysterious, gave us a single character to see them through, whether it's Bashir or Reed, and not, have the captain be able to kind of cleanly hail somebody in Section 31 or an admiral be able to do it. So
that's the thing, though, because I don't want to jump to a conclusion here, because we technically don't know where they're going to set this show. So
right.
Yeah,
and I'm still not, to be honest with you,
it's all speculation at this point.
I'm still not convinced that it will even be Section 31. I think when they announced that Michelle Yeoh was going to have a show and it was going to center around this character, at the time she was in Section 31, and the way to kind of earmark that show is to say, oh, it's the Michelle Yeoh Section 31 show. But she's so removed from Section 31 at this point, with where we see her character, and at the end when she leaves in Discovery season 3. What's to say? I guess she could end up in Section 31 again, but she ends at a point where she could go literally anywhere. So why does that have to be Section 31? Yeah. So I would prefer them not to do that. If they're going to send her off and do a show surrounding her, I hope they explore all their options and don't force feed the Section 31 stuff. I don't know that that's the best idea. I'm not saying they can't do it. It's certainly possible to successfully do anything, really. But it wouldn't be my first choice.
Yeah.
I think it's been shown to work best as a small doses, mysterious,
Yeah. Don't even
cog
give
in the wheel.
Don't even give him the Starfleet badge.
No, yeah.
Because at least in Deep Space Nine, they're just all black. It's just we don't even. It's such an unknown. It has no, and it's supposed to be no ties back to, But with the badge is frustrating.
Carrying a badge in your pocket,
which I think is cool. The black badges are cool. I know everyone's gonna give me crap, but I like to keep Section 31 in the shadows, because I think it just works better and it's more interesting. So
yeah, they Aussie Trekkie's asking. There's a whole lot of stuff in the chat, and we love you guys.
Yeah.
Keeping this conversation
Thank you, guys.
alive in the chat, and we'll definitely double back and poke and prod at some of the things you guys are talking about. But just to ask the question, in season 2 of Discovery, did they specifically state that control is related to Section 31? I think so. I think the way I consumed that, at least, was that control was a threat assessment program that Section 31 was using to chart their missions. Basically, that it was like an AI program designed to look at what was going on out there and to tell Section 31 these are the things that need attention. Program enough information into the computer system, and you get a very complicated threat assessment algorithm, and that's what they were using, and it did what evil AIs do in science fiction, which is another thing I kind of wish that was a little more three-dimensional and complex than it turned out to be. But so I do believe that it was a sort of Section 31 created program. Ozatrekki. I could be wrong if anybody has a different idea.
Yeah, that's just the way I took it. But Ozatrekki, there was a lot of speculation of is this the creation of the Borg? Because technically, we're not in the future yet. We're still pre where we are now. So that there was a lot of speculation and fan theories that this is how the Borg were created and things. It's just.
We spent a lot of time in those last handful of episodes freaking out about, please don't
do it.
We don't want it to be a Borg origin story. It's just not like that. That would have felt too cute. I'm glad they didn't do it. But there was a lot of imagery with nanoprobes and kinds of things going on there in some of those episodes that led you to think, could it be? Are they really doing this? And at least for my money, they did not. See what else we have going on here. There's some talk in the episode that you just watched in our Arma. One interesting note in that episode is Admiral Ross's sort of complicity in that plan, like the fact that he is pretty in the know about what they were doing on that mission.
I think I don't know. If you're I forget the term. If you're an admiral or rear admiral or fleet admiral, whatever admiral you are involved in a war, something like this, I feel like you'll definitely get approached by a Section 31 operative, because I just think that it's the nature of what's going on and what he's working with, and just kind of like a president or a higher figure. You get kind of involved in some of the stuff that. Maybe the general population doesn't necessarily know. So
I think it's important to show that, because if the idea is that it's an arm of Starfleet, it's not a rogue independent actor who's out there, operating in its own vacuum and doesn't answer to anybody. The idea here is that it's a piece of Starfleet. It's in the Starfleet chart. These are members of. These are Starfleet Academy graduates who were recruited and sent off to do this thing and were picked, and they are members of Starfleet, and so these missions have to have some connection somehow to somebody in Starfleet, or they might as well not be in Starfleet. They might as well be rogue actors who are out there not answering to anybody and just causing chaos to cause chaos. So,
but it's I get the sense that it's not attached to the admiral. It's just an entity that's kind of I don't know, barely attached because out of necessity, in case something like this happened. Which I feel like the beauty of that episode is it's just beautifully written, that their manipulation, and at the end, Admiral is kind of where Bashir is. Kind of frustrated too. It is what it is, and that's
And that's another thing that, like we were saying, Deep Space Nine is so situated to explore these darker sides of the Federation, and that you talk about the struggles to maintain the sort of Roddenberry utopian future. Deep Space Nine, because of the premise of the show and where the show goes, is also well situated to explore the extremes that organizations and governments and societies are pushed to in these desperate moments. This isn't just wartime. This is wartime where it is 50-50 at this point in the show. I think at the tail end of season 7, the Romulans are in now. They're not losing anymore necessarily, but it's a 50-50 proposition. They're not winning. And what does that force? Does that force Starfleet's hand and Section 31 now has this opportunity to even be more emboldened and to take more chances and to feel more, in a comfort zone and to approach Admiral Ross or whoever to propose a mission like this and a plan like this.
And this war doesn't have just a small little repercussion. Like, this is like a lot of things hang in the balance, and you'd think that a Section 31 would be drawn to this because it's such a big potential of big repercussions. So you'd think that, I mean, not every war I feel like would draw a Section 31 influence. Maybe I'm wrong, but this feels like a big kind of pillar. Yeah,
definitely. I agree. Section 31 is an interesting piece of Star Trek because of how prominent I think it's become in recent years. It got introduced to Deep Space Nine. It was sort of left alone as a Deep Space Nine idea, an entity that kind of was at home in that show until the end of Enterprise. And now, since the end of Enterprise, it's been in Discovery. It was in Into Darkness. And so if you just look at like the last slice of Star Trek stuff that's happened in the last 15 years of Star Trek's existence, it's been there a lot. It's become sort of one of their more return to ideas, which is surprising to me and somewhat. I if they do a show about it, if that actually does happen, and that's the show. Now we even get a series about, like, it really has. It might be one of the things from Deep Space Nine that has like catapulted into
modern Trek,
sort of affecting the rest of the story, the continuity, as much as anything that show did, which is kind of a fascinating turn of events. That I have mixed feelings about. There are times that, like I said, that I kind of wish, kind of like we've talked about with Mirror Universe and the Borg, I think less is more in some of these things. I think that the urge to further explore these ideas is real, and I get why.
Yeah.
They're appealing ideas, and there's interesting things to mine there in the continuity. I would be tempted as well, but I think there's perhaps some good advice out there to leave well enough alone and be more choosy with the opportunities to play with these things.
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, I think the strength of being really secretive is not showing not showing too much. And now they're potentially, like Bill made a great point of saying that it's not really set in stone. It's going to be a completely, maybe I'm totally wrong, but this clip won't age well. But I just I would definitely agree with that. I'm torn because I think it's an interesting topic, but I think why it works so well is because we don't have the biggest kind of back. Not at this point we've got a lot more, but before we haven't had a lot of. It was very choosy. It was just a handful of episodes that dealt with it. I don't know. I'm curious to see where they go with it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The sort of anomaly here is Into Darkness, which I think is easy to sort of set aside a little bit because it is in the Kelvin timeline. I've always been pretty. That's the least of my issues with that movie, really. I have other things that I wish were done differently, more than the Section 31 involvement, because the place that Starfleet finds itself in post 09 in the Kelvin timeline, with the destruction of Vulcan and the sort of 9/11 parallel that turned out to be, with putting Starfleet on its heels and really becoming centered on security and protectiveness. Would allow, again, kind of like Deep Space Nine does, Section 31 to take hold and to be pushed a little bit more into a more mainstream place.
My issue is
because it's good.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
No, you.
My issue is why brand it Section 31? Why can't we just be it's Starfleet? Starfleet got a little
intelligence.
Yeah. Why do we have to brand it that? And I think Deep Space Nine era, Section 31, would never. They're not into branding. They're just into. I get the sense that I could even get on board with Section 31 could be just made up, and next week it's Section 48. You know, it's just because they I think it's such a great mystery because like Sloan is his real name. I knew it was Sloan in when there's great dialogue there too. It's just man, why it's I don't know. That's maybe my one of my biggest issues is why have it branded like that. Just I don't know. Go ahead. Keep going.
Completely. Your instinct is to keep them as completely secretive and nebulous.
No
as
ships.
possibly
No
could be.
ships. Just operas.
No ships.
Yeah.
No labels. No cards with return addresses on them. None of that stuff. And I think that's correct. I think that's a good instinct to allow this to work.
Because that's how. That's how it was in Deep Space Nine. Like they would try to look up all these things while they don't have any record or fingerprint or any DNA. Like these old people don't actually exist, and that's I feel like the beauty of it. Because I don't know, other entities like Section 31. That's why I feel it's kind of the same way. It's very mysterious, and dangerous and scary, and unknown is scary. So that's I don't know.
And you're right about the name. I think if memory serves, Section 31 was never intended to be like the name of an organization. It's literally the section of the Starfleet Charter that addresses the ability to have like.
Which I think they mentioned in chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Bill, you're right. Yeah, it was just meant to be. That's not technically there. Yeah. So I don't know.
Article 14, Section 31. It's literally a paragraph in the charter that says, that there is a clandestine or a branch of Starfleet intelligence that can operate in the shadow. There's dialogue in Inquisition, I believe, when Sisko finds it in the charter, or that it's found in the charter, that's what it is. So you're right. I mean, it's not like even that they have a name, Section 31. Maybe it's taken that on over time, and that's how people identify it. But they shouldn't go around handing cards out or badges out saying we're Section 31.
Yeah.
So I just forgive Into Darkness a little bit more because it's in its own timeline and things can play out differently there.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact like what happens in Into Darkness doesn't, by the rules of all the Star Trek stuff, doesn't impact Deep Space Nine at all. Like that Deep Space Nine stuff's going to play out totally different in that timeline. So how Section 31 evolves and is seen over the course of history is going to be inherently different there. So the way they did it, you're right. I mean, they could have just as easily. I think the reality with that movie is that they were really enjoying in the developmental phase of that movie putting in things that were continuity canon and fan servicey stuff that would make people go, oh man, they're bringing that back. And I think they really thought they had a cool reference. And at the time it was. At the time, Section 31 wasn't as well mined. I mean, it was in Deep Space Nine for a few episodes and at the end of that show, and seen a couple times in Enterprise, which established again that it was there from the beginning and is this thing that charts history and is always there in Starfleet. So it lends itself to popping in here and there if you want to play with that idea. But it could have just as easily been, a different set of producers or writers, or a different lane could have easily been taken to just have it be
Starfleet intelligence.
Starfleet has gone this more militaristic, protective, nationalistic route post Vulcan attack and
I think
the
the message would have still been the same. Hey, we're still Starfleet. I don't think changing the name would make a difference. So I don't know.
Right. Indeed. And I guess I think that's probably why people keep coming back to it, whether it's Into Darkness or Discovery or Enterprise. I think the pull that keeps bringing it back is it's a really interesting tool to play with that allows our characters, whether it's Kelvin, Kirk, and Spock, or Archer and T'Pol and Trip, or Pike and Burnham and Saru, to advocate for Starfleet values, to advocate for the sort of Roddenberry Star Trek stuff, like to throw that out there as a response to this different approach to maintaining order in the galaxy and, you know, keeping things clean, and it allows our characters to sing that song and preach those gospels from the Roddenberry stuff that is so ingrained as like the identity of Trek. So I suspect that's what keeps it coming back and keeps writers and people who are trying to come up with these things and trying to keep those fires burning, that this is what Star Trek is, this is what it does, this is how it differentiates itself from other sci-fi, that we're advocating for these brighter future, you know, utopian ideas. Section 31 lends itself to putting our characters in those positions to defend those ideas.
Yeah. Bill, I'm gonna try to flip something you said on its head a little bit and try to make you think. So you and I kind of had an issue as well with season 2, but do you think that, because if I remember correctly, like Discovery itself was kind of unknown and mysterious. Remember, Burnham comes onto the ship. What is this place? Like it's an experimental type of thing. And so, do you think that would? Yeah, do you think that would draw in Section 31 because it's so unknown? And in my headcanon, I think it's unknown for to the fleet about what's going on with Discovery.
I think in the beginning of Discovery, I think part of the idea probably was, and the Discovery, like the Next Generation, and like a lot of these, like had some real tumultuous times in the beginning of the creation of these shows. So I suspect there are some inconsistencies with what was desired and what was intended and what actually ended up on screen and what got executed in those early days. But I suspect that there were ideas even that early on that, you know, Discovery is a prototypical ship. They're dabbling in experimental technology. Section 31 is involved somehow with the protection of, you know, the technology and there's a black opsness to this mission, this prototypical venture that they're on. So, yeah, I think the idea was there. I think it's not consistently portrayed on screen. Yeah. And then I think because of the nature of the way that they play out the war stuff, where Discovery sort of becomes a major point in their defense against the Klingons in those early season 1 episodes, that I don't know that it maintains much of an anonymity within the fleet. You know, I get the sense that it's more well known than that. But I would buy that maybe before the war and while the ship is being developed, it was designed under the pretense of it's going to be this kind of a thing. It's going to be kept quiet, under wraps. Yeah. You know, this is not intended to be out there for the galaxy's consumption until it's, you know, buttoned up and done and it's approved on all levels. Yeah. Section 31, no, it was Mirror Lorca. That's a good question from Ozzy Trekkie. That's the thing with. There's so many interesting, like we were kind of talking about at the beginning, there's all these ideas that you can like come back to and try to retroactively make fit and play with and expand and potentially, you know, who knows. And the beginnings of Discovery, because of the fact that like the Section 31 stuff doesn't really begin until season 2 in earnest, but because in Context is for Kings, when she's on the ship for the first time, she's walking by, they point out there's black badges. Why are there black badges? What do they mean? The prisoners with Burnham walking on the ship, being taken to the mess hall. So right from the beginning, there are black badges and they're mysterious, and now we know what they are and why they're there. And, or we don't know why they're there, but we know they're there. That there were Section 31 dudes on Discovery from the very beginning. Yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah. And like, again, not fully vetted and explored, I don't think, for a variety of reasons. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Section 31? Where do you? I think we've kind of made our opinions clear. That, you know, I think that we both feel like it's a cool idea that in the right measure can bring a lot to the table.
Favorite
but there's
episode?
Always a risk. Favorite episode? I think it's the one you just watched, Inter Arma Silent Legis. I think the way that the complexity of that and the way that calls into question those ethical questions in wartime, and the way that Deep Space Nine puts Starfleet on its heels through its use of that war story, putting our ideals and these Starfleet principles and Roddenberry ideas to the test.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most successful use of Section 31 to do. Like, I think that's the best reason for it to exist. That's what it puts the characters in best position to respond to, and that's the episode that I think most successfully plays in that terrain.
Yeah,
it feels less like an ornament hanging on the show as a whole. This is a cool Star Trek thing.
I would have to agree.
Cyber Honey mentions Extreme Measures, which is the one you haven't gotten to yet, at the very end of season 7. That's one of the episodes in that last 10 episode run, where there is more Section 31 to talk about for what you have coming up, with the way that Deep Space Nine ends. That I'm sure we'll get into in our season 7 recap and kind of wrapping up Deep Space Nine as a whole as well.
Yeah.
Jimmy 77 says in our Arma and Silent Legis as well. I think that's a pretty common, I would imagine. Cited, yeah. I think you're going to often get that in Inquisition.
But the thing that I love about this is another just comment about Section 31 is that the mysteriousness of it lends itself to look at other situations in Starfleet and in past shows, like, was he with Section 31? Like, stuff like that. I really enjoy trying to formulate my headcanon. So as much as I'd like to see some of that stuff fleshed out and explored, it's also fun to be like, see Section 31 or Starfleet Intelligence or...
Right.
I don't know.
How does it all work?
And
that's half the fun with Star Trek is thinking about the canvas of it all and playing with the different potential connections, and everybody can kind of fill their own gaps their own way. And that's the beauty of having so much content and having such a wide span of history to think about.
Yep.
I think that'll about do it. We're coming up on an hour. I think this was a really fun conversation. Really appreciate everything going on in the chat. Really, active.
You guys rock.
Conversations going on in there, and some cool ideas just thrown out there. Some, divergent opinions, which is cool. I love to see that different ideas. Definitely appreciate you guys.
You guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Twitter and Discord are probably the best ways to keep the discussion going. Like Bill said, we appreciate everyone in chat and also people who are watching after the fact. We'll be back next week to talk about some more Star Trek. We'll also be back with some more Lower Decks coverage with course heading, so definitely stay tuned for that as well. I think that about does it. Anything else, Bill?
I think that'll do it.
Yep.
Stay tuned. We'll have a Lower Decks recap coming up any day now. I think probably tomorrow that'll pop up for the episode 7. We just recorded that a couple nights ago. Keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah. All right, that's been episode 186. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks everybody.